Hi, my name is Alyssa Vignon. I am here with Brandwatch. Thank you so much for coming to my session today. Today, we're going to talk through Brandwatch as a platform, just give you a quick overview of who we are, what our purpose is, and why we're here. And then we'll dive quickly into the platform demonstration. So we'll take a look at a topic that is really hot and trending right now, cryptocurrency. So we'll explore that in just a moment, but quickly I want to start with Brandwatch as an organization, who we are, and how do we think about digital consumer intelligence. So first and foremost, what is our purpose? Well, our purpose here is to create a new kind of intelligence to help bring structure and meaning to the voices of the billions of consumers that are happening across the web every single day. And we're doing this so that we can help our customers really make decisions that truly connect with consumer needs all in real time. We know that conversations are changing rapidly in the world that we live in today. So it's critical that organizations and brands are able to stay on top of those conversations to be able to understand what their consumers need when they need it. So how do we do this? Well, first we aggregate the world's largest digital data library. So when we think about social, we think of traditional Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, etc. But we're going much farther than that. We're also bringing in data from blogs, forums, Reddit, Tumblr, review sites, news sites, etc., and aggregating all of that data within our platform, and then allowing you to apply smart AI engines and segmentation on top of that data, so we can cut down these massive data sets, so allowing you to quickly understand trends and derive meaningful insights from these large pools of data. Now, when we think about digital consumer intelligence, we know that social data shouldn't live in isolation. So because of that, we allow you to pair other enterprise-held data that you might have, whether it be survey data, Google Analytics data, data from any other system that you might be working with, allow you to pair that with that social data, and then deliver it through revolutionized reporting, really allowing you to get that real-time voice of the consumer to anybody within your organization. So now we're going to go ahead and pop over into the platform for a quick demonstration on cryptocurrency category and start to understand how we can utilize some of these tools to derive some consumer insights out of that topic. So here we are in the Brandwatch platform, and we're going to take a look today again at cryptocurrency. So how can we start to understand through all of this social data that's happening across the web, what are some of those consumer trends and opportunities within this category? What is that conversation volume? How is that conversation volume shifted over time? And then where is this conversation happening? Our flexible dashboards here, where we can really kind of mix and match, utilize our filters to show specific date ranges, etc. We can start to understand this category in this conversation. And what we can see here is that this cryptocurrency conversation is massive. So we're getting millions of mentions just in the past 31 days alone. We've got over 17 million mentions, hundreds of thousands of authors reaching billions of individuals across the globe. So this conversation is huge. And taking a look at Brandwatch's history, so our data actually goes all the way back until 2010, but here we're going back until 2016. We can really start to see how this conversation has shifted and changes and evolved over time. So from 2016, we can see this conversation, happening here, but much, much less, than it was. We see a spike up here in 2018. And most recently, we see this conversation really soaring, really taking off. So definitely a hot topic, definitely a place that a lot of organizations are interested in at the moment. And we can start to see as well, where is this conversation happening? So again, as I mentioned, we're collecting data from all across the web, whether it be traditional sites, but also news sites, forums, more niche sites like bitcointalk.org. So we're ingesting all of this data within our platform, and you're able to see here what the conversation volume is on each of our sites. And then we can start to aggregate this together and analyze it to be able to identify some topics and themes that might be surfacing in this conversation. So we know this category is huge. We know the conversation is huge, but we want to understand really, well, what's going on? What's driving some of these spikes in volume and conversation? What's trending in right now? What are some of those themes that are emerging organically in the conversation? And what are the topics that are most top of mind for consumers? So taking a look here, just in the last couple of months or so, we can see that there are some spikes in data that are happening. So what exactly is driving those spikes in data? We can see here these A and B points here being called out. Those are when we see the biggest spikes. That's our artificial intelligence at work. So Iris is our AI tool that goes through and it looks for any anomalies in data. So anytime that we might see our data set spiking up, we want to understand what exactly is driving that, what's happening on that date specifically that's driving consumer conversation. Here we can see on this big spike that happened around September 24th, instead of needing to click in and read through 68,000 mentions or so, we're able to see here right on the side distills down for us that there was a trending news article that day, some trending Reddit threads, and clicking in, we can start to see, well, what exactly was driving that conversation? And you can see here that China declaring all cryptocurrency transactions as illegal was something that drove a ton of conversation on that day. We can see what that conversation was specifically on Reddit, on specific Reddit threads, etc. So really making it easy for us to understand when something is starting to bubble up, if there is a specific type or topic of conversation, what exactly is happening. Now, looking at trending topics over time, one question that we might ask ourselves is, well, is this China conversation still relevant? We saw that happening about a month or so ago. And we can see here on the trending in versus trending out, of course, we want to make sure that we're staying, current with what people are talking about, and that we're not talking about something that happened a while ago that maybe people aren't talking or thinking about as much anymore. And we can see here that China conversation is starting to fade and starting out. So not really as hot as a topic. Conversation around Bitcoin, NFTs staying pretty consistent. And then Shiba Coin also trending right now as well. So this is something that's trending in that people are thinking about a little bit more. We can also start to see some of the major themes, macro themes that are happening within this conversation. So we see, of course, there's a lot of conversation around Bitcoin. There's a lot of conversation around tokens, but there's also a lot of conversation happening around trading and investments. So starting to have more in-depth conversations around how do I get cryptocurrency, how do I trade, where should I invest, etc. So we're seeing some of these conversation themes happen, what we want to start to understand is, well, how are consumers really feeling about this, right? We see a lot of conversation out there, but we want to maybe take a step back and think, okay, well, are consumers just kind of out there chatting about it? Is this a space that's legitimate? Is this a space that is credible? How are people really thinking and feeling about this? And in order to do that, we can utilize Brandwatch's proprietary tool, which is called custom classifiers, which allows you to understand more nuanced conversations within your data set. So instead of segmenting by keyword, we're using natural language processing and machine learning to categorize our own data and train the system to understand types of conversations that might indicate trust versus distrust. Now, this can be applied to any category you want, but here we really want to understand, how are consumers really thinking about this? Is this just something that's kind of a joke that's out there, or is this something that's really legitimate where people are really interested in investing? So in order to understand that, we've created and trained our system to identify speech language patterns around trust versus distrust, and then monitor and see how those things are shifting and evolving over time. So you can see here trust versus distrust. As distrust is definitely still making up the majority of conversation. We can see it's almost kind of 60-40 here, but we see trust actually increasing at a much faster rate. And then taking a look back at that historic data set that we were looking at earlier, we can really start to see how this conversation and how this trust versus distrust has evolved over time. So we can see here clearly, back in 2016, when this was a much smaller conversation, we can see trust versus distrust closer to 80-20%. Whereas now, as time goes on, as this becomes a more legitimate space, as people become more familiar and more comfortable with the topic, we can see it's starting to even out a little bit more, approaching 40-60, maybe even 50-50. So starting to dig into that trust conversation, we really want to understand, well, what drives trust? When people are talking about legitimacy in this space, what are some of those conversations that they're having, and what are some of those topics that they're talking about? So now we can filter and isolate that trust conversation specifically within our data set to be able to understand what are some of those topics and themes that are emerging out of that conversation. And we can see here, of course, those major coins like Bitcoin and Ethereum. So not talking so much about those altcoins. Conversation definitely kind of revolving around those more tried and true coins here. But we can also see a lot of comment around expert traders, people looking for people to manage their cryptocurrency portfolios, more kind of investment help conversations, which platform they should go with, things like that. So that brings us to the question of, well, what is the role of financial advisors in this space? We see this conversation coming out around that trust. And if we want to dig in and really understand, is there demand for financial advisors in this space? Is that increasing? What are current perceptions of financial advisors as it relates to cryptocurrency? What's driving those perceptions? And then is there any white space or opportunity for any individuals or organizations adjacent to this space to really be able to come in and take a stance with this market as it relates to financial advising and investment? So what we can see here, again, now we're taking that full cryptocurrency conversation, but we're isolating it to people having conversations specifically around financial advisors and professional financial advisors or brokers as it relates to cryptocurrency. And what we can see is that over time, though this is a much smaller proportion of conversation is tracking in terms of volume very similarly to total conversation. So we're seeing a huge spike up in demand for financial advice, sound financial advice in the cryptocurrency space. Now, we might want to understand as well, while this conversation is increasing, what exactly are those conversations? What's the sentiment around those conversations? How are people really thinking or feeling about financial advisors as it relates to cryptocurrency? And here, down this conversation by sentiment. And in doing so, what we can see is that there's a huge opportunity that emerges. We're seeing a ton of negative sentiment around financial advisors as it relates to the cryptocurrency space, much more than people feeling positive about this. And when we dig into what some of those top reasons are why people are feeling negative about financial advisors and cryptocurrency, we can pull out some top verbatims and themes of conversation that are really helping us understand what's going on here. So just taking a look at some of the top posts around this space, we can see here that people have some complaints around thinking that their financial advisors don't understand cryptocurrency, advising people to fire their financial advisor if they haven't talked to them, or potentially even thinking that financial advisors are maybe investing themselves but not sharing that good information with them, etc. So definitely some tension point here, definitely is of opportunity for anybody in the financial advising space to be able to address this need that consumers are expressing online, that desire for more thought leadership and advice around the cryptocurrency space. So now taking another angle and another look at this data set, we can actually slice this data down by specific target audiences utilizing Brandwatch's feature social panels. Social panel allows you to create a group of individuals to filter your data set by. So if you've got a target individuals, in this case, we're looking at female investors, you're allowed to define a specific group of individuals by whatever criteria you desire. So if you want to look at individuals by demographics, where they live, gender, interests, what they might be talking about, accounts that they might be following, etc. You can create custom groups of individuals, and then you're able to use that group as a filter. So you can really isolate that specific target audience and what they might be saying, thinking, feeling about a specific topic, who they are, and how to best connect with them. So taking a look at this custom example that we've set up here, staying along the lines of that cryptocurrency space, we wanted to take a look at female investors. We know that they're often a big target group for a lot of individual organizations in the financial space. So we want to understand this group and see, well, what are they saying about cryptocurrency? How is this conversation relevant to that specific target audience? How are they feeling about investing in the cryptocurrency space? And how does that compare to the general population? Are we seeing them trending along the same lines, or do they have different perceptions or thoughts, etc.? And looking here, we can see, general population on the left-hand side, and then we've got the female investors group on the right-hand side here. So we can see that general population in the last month or so, conversation volume's up. We see female investor volume increasing at a very similar rate here as well. So definitely a conversation that's increasingly appealing among this group as well. And then when we look back into that trust versus distrust conversation that we were looking at last time, again, we can overlay that female investors group here, which we're doing on the right. And what we can actually see is that versus the general population, these female investors are actually more trusting. So we actually see this trust versus distrust at more of a 50-50 ratio versus the closer to 60-40 ratio that we're seeing for the general population. So if this is our target audience, we can learn from these metrics that female investors are interested in this space and that they're definitely trusting of this space as well. So if we confirm that, and then we want to understand, well, how do we understand who these individuals are? How do we understand how to target them, how to relate to them? What else are they interested in? And what else do they care about? So we can start to understand as well, not just what they're talking about, but we can also understand who they are, what some of their professions are, interests, etc. Again, to be able to help us relate better to these individuals. So we can see here, who are they? Who are some influencers within this space? We can see the Stephanie Meyers here, different individuals here that are talking about cryptocurrency, driving cryptocurrency discussions. We can see here this is filtered by impact. So who are the most impactful voices among this group of females? What are their professions? So we can see, quite a bit of executive, but also some sales, marketing, PR, etc. And we can start to build a profile of these individuals. So what are they interested in? Of course, they're heavily interested in business, but also interested in books, beauty, health, and fitness, a lot of interest in family and parenting as well. And we can understand at a more micro level as well. So more specifically, what are they interested in? And how does that over or under index versus the general population? So we can see here, of course, a ton of interest in finance and investing and personal finance, but what else are they interested in? So we can see quite a bit CNBC, MSNBC, a lot of world news, also really interested in health and wellness and things like that. So this is really helping us get a deep understanding of who these individuals are, inform content, partnerships, how to talk to them, what they care about, etc. We can also understand as well, what's the content that performs best with them? So if we want to create our own content, drive our own conversations, or be thought leaders in this space, what's the content that resonates most with them? What are they sharing out there most in the world? And by clicking on this, we can understand and link directly to any of these articles. So we can see here, this conversation around wanting more sound financial advice is something that is trending with these groups of individuals. Okay, so now that we've seen all of that data live within our platform, we want to understand how can we disseminate this data out to anybody within our organization. So being able to keep a pulse on top of this conversation all in real time and make sure that anybody within our organization has access to that real time data that's as it's happening can be critical. So our solution for that is Brandwatch Vizia, which is our live dynamic reporting tool. So Brandwatch Vizia allows you to integrate data from multiple different data sources throughout your organization, whether it be SEO data, you know, typical social data. You can integrate data from Google Sheets, Google Slides, Salesforce, etc. There's multiple different integrations that are available to you. And what we can see here within this specific report is that we're integrating data from BuzzSumo, which is our content marketing and SEO tool, integrating data that we just saw around cryptocurrency from social, and then also pulling in data from Google Finance. So we can actually see live data on the current price of cryptocurrency and how that relates to the conversations that are going on within social. Just starting out here, we can see some SEO data, some top trending content data. So again, really giving us that live picture of what's hot today, what's trending today, what are some of those keywords and questions that people are asking and searching for today, like what is cryptocurrency, what are the best cryptocurrencies, how do I invest in cryptocurrency, etc. We can also pair that with then social data. So we can see all of those conversations, top posts that are happening, top themes of conversation, how things are changing or trending over time. And then we can marry that with some finance data as well. So we can understand pulling in that live data from Google Finance. We can see what is the price of Bitcoin today? How does that track and relate to what we see on social data? So looking at the two charts on the bottom, this is year to date social data and conversation, as well as year to date Bitcoin price. So you can see how nicely these two things line up and track side by side. You can also get a daily pulse on trust versus distrust. How is that looking today? And how is conversation volume shifting or changing today? So Vizia is a really powerful tool that allows you for multiple custom integrations. Like I mentioned, there's a bunch that are out of the box, as well as the ability to create any other integrations that you might have with any other data sets that you might have throughout your organization. So thank you so much. I hope this session was helpful, and I look forward to answering any and all questions that you might have.